In a life-changing move, this man went from being Yorkshire's top Jimmy Savile impersonator to become an olive farmer in Tuscany.
We did it, Nico. You made that.
A year on, we follow Richard Turnbull, his pregnant wife Sarah, and their 3-year-old son Gregory as they struggle to cope with the realities of life on the farm. Richard and Sarah cannot live on olive oil alone. They have to generate crucial income by taking in paying guests. But with their first visitors about to arrive and the holiday accommodation nowhere near ready, the pressure's on.
But it's not me, is it? It's guests.
Now there's a last-minute disaster that leaves them entirely without water. And there's a devastating verdict from their very first guests.
Sorry it's not turned out to be as you wanted. I apologise for the Tuscan weather.
It's a cup of tea.
48 hours to go before Sarah and Richard's first guests, 2 sisters, are due to arrive to stay in the one-up, one-down chestnut house hidden amongst the farm's olive terraces. A bathroom has been built on the side of the tiny barn, and Richard has fashioned some stairs to access the bedroom. But there's still an awful lot to be done, and their survival in Tuscany depends on making their holiday business a success. The first priority, however, is to fix the severed pipe that supplies water to the whole property. Alfonso, the young plumber, has scoured the local villages for a robust new pipe and now has to work against the clock to get it installed.
This is very much 11th hour. Alfonso has arrived with the new tubing, which we'll do in 2 pieces. So this will have literally 1 connection in it to run it down, hopefully run it down to the river.
The water is pumped up from the stream in the valley, 1,000 feet below the house.
It was one of those jobs that was bound to need doing the day before somebody arrived. Obviously.
The water pipe fiasco means the preparations at Chestnut House are well behind schedule. So Richard calls in reinforcements. Local odd-job man, Andre.
Andre is being a superstar cleaner, so he's doing all my heavy hoovering and things. Bless him. Lucky Andre.
I'll put it down.
While the boys get on with the heavy work, up at the farmhouse, it's feeding time. But there's trouble there too.
She's not really.
Daphne, Gregory's favourite hen, is looking decidedly unwell.
We have no idea what's wrong with her. She's got nothing on her that says she's been got by a fox. There's nothing wrong with her visibly, apart from that she's really poorly and her head's on one side and she's just a very unhappy chicken.
Giuseppe, the chippy they brought in to fix up the doors, has chickens of his own and doesn't think the signs are good for Daphne.
No.
Sarah, with characteristic English sentimentality, decides that a cuddly blanket and TLC are all that's needed to get Daphne up and clucking again.
Giuseppe says that rather than put her in front of the fire, we should actually put her in the oven with some potatoes. And I'm sure he thinks we are completely mad worrying about a chicken who would have definitely had its neck run by now if it was in an Italian household.
Down at the stream, it's the moment of truth for Alfonso as he connects up the new pipe to the water tank. Up top, the young foreman checks to see if the pump is working.
It's going in.
Good, that's right.
Hello, Gregory.
That's it, we're back in business. We have water. Who could want for anything else?
But all the running water in the world cannot save poor Daphne. Somebody's going to have to do the decent thing.
Daphne's time is up, I'm afraid. And I just can't do it at the moment. I'm a little bit too sensitive with being pregnant and all that. Just can't bring myself to it. And Richard certainly can't do it. He's a big wuss. But Andre, who is our odd-job lad and a bit of a superstar, has kindly said that he would do it for us. very sad.
Daphne is about to be dispatched the Tuscan way. It's Richard's first experience of the harsh realities of farm life.
I console myself that it is for the best, but no, it's not a nice thing. It's not a nice thing to happen, and it's not a nice way for the chicken to meet its end, really. But it was a very, very poorly chicken. He wasn't going to get better. It was just going to starve to death. So, a mercy killing, I guess.
But there's little time to mourn. Chestnut House is still a shambles. Richard and Sarah have to be up at dawn to stand any chance of getting the job done. Daybreak. With the guests due at 4 o'clock, Richard has just 10 hours to transform the old chestnut barn into an idyllic hideaway for two. You can see daylight through the ceiling. There's only half a kitchen. They hadn't even started on the shower. Richard cracks on with the bathroom. Every toilet door needs a lock, but it's usually on the inside. Site manager Sarah comes to inspect his handiwork.
Lovely. Tall person's mirror.
And she doesn't miss a trick.
You're supposed to have the lock on the inside.
Well, there'll be a lock on the inside as well, so they can lock it from the outside so it doesn't just bang about. And then there'll be a look.
How many times do you think we're going to get kids locking each other in there?
Well, there's no kids stopping here. So.
No, oh, I see the big wall round it.
I ain't got time.
The tight deadline is getting to Richard, and Sarah decides it's more prudent to stay out of his way.
Rich is grumpy because he's just not got everything done. And despite the fact that it obviously isn't my fault that he hasn't done everything he's got to do, then presumably the logic is I'm the only person around that he can shout at, therefore I get shouted at.
There's another reason for Richard's bad mood. He's not looking forward to having to share his piece of Tuscan paradise with visitors.
Sarah likes other people being around. I can take it or leave it. At the end of the day, this is a business, so it's not a house party. It's not, like doing the discos. It's not my party. I don't have to be, centre of attention for everybody.
But guests mean money. Richard has no alternative but to go with the flow and put on a happy face. But it's a case of more haste, less speed.
Well, this isn't the easiest thing in the world. I wonder if I've just got it completely wrong.
Lunchtime, and they're way behind schedule. Only a miracle can save them from disaster. Bang on cue.
Hello. Hi, Mary Jo.
It's the guests on the phone.
Okay, all right, okay, no problem. Our first guest, thank you, is late. She's had a huge problem. Her baggage has gone missing. She wants me to pick her up at Pisa Airport at 7:30 anyway. Well, 7 o'clock, 7:30. We've got another 2 hours, boys.
Sarah, excellent news. Just tell us where you want this light.
It's a heaven-sent reprieve for Sarah and Richard.
It's to airports and airplane companies not being able to do their job either.
Although they're only providing self-catering accommodation, Sarah's covered for late arrivals.
I've got, fortunately, a few meals prepared in the freezer, which is just sort of for emergencies, like this evening, where they have an emergency and need some tea. Tuscan baked beans, some apricots left over from last year. Oh, that's a lasagna. Aubergine parmigiana, vegetarian option. Oh, I lost berries from last year too.
Now they've a few more precious hours to get Chestnut House up to scratch, Sarah can take the time to perfect the finishing touches, leaving Richard to make the 2-hour round trip to the airport. Exhausted, he's not in the mood.
Does she know it's me that's going to pick her up, or does she think it's you?
No, I had a very bad reception on the car. I said we'd pick her up, that's all.
What's she called?
Not on the phone, I couldn't hear her on the phone. Joe, Mary Joe, something Joe, don't know. How would I know what she looks like or anything?
Because you did all the bookings, you should know.
What? I should know. Well, I'll ask people for a bloody passport photograph next time, shall I?
Just a name would be good.
Well, I could find it out for you if you hadn't.
Despite the limitations of time, money and experience, Chestnut House now seems to have all the basic amenities. But Andre reserves the right to be skeptical.
It's very small, yeah.
Richard returns later with the two sisters. At last, they're safely installed in their holiday home.
God, I feel so relieved. I really do feel completely relieved.
When they wake up in the morning, if they've liked what they've seen just now, when they wake up in the morning and see the backdrop that it's set against, I think they're going to have a pretty spectacular start to the second day of their holiday.
Cheers, me dears.
Cheers, here's to...
Here's to playing guess.
But Richard and Sarah are about to find out that keeping their guests happy isn't as easy as they thought.
These are the kind of girls I should imagine that would never, ever go camping.
And will it be baby Maria or Marco for Sarah? It's the first morning of the first guest's holiday, and the spectacular view that Richard promised hasn't materialised. Defeated by the weather, the two sisters have decided to journey to nearby Pescia for some indoor sightseeing. But before leaving, they had two major complaints about their accommodation. Firstly, they'd spent a cold and sleepless night as they couldn't get their heating to work.
I think when they read wood-burning heater on the details, they thought that you could actually flick a switch on the wood-burning heater and it would just then burn the wood. I don't think they realised that they actually had to do anything to do with flames, lighting, that kind of thing. I think they're just used to the creature comforts, and these are the kind of girls I should imagine that would never ever go camping. Okay, right. What a shame the weather's so naff.
The sisters also complained they'd had no hot running water in the bathroom. It seems the hastily installed shower isn't functioning, so Richard has put in an early morning SOS to plumber Alfonso.
No, questo no. No.
No.
Alfonso's diagnosis is that there's an electrical problem.
The water heater that we've put in for him here temporarily hasn't been wired in by the electrician as yet, so hopefully he'll turn up soon. So just as a temporary measure, Alfonso's put an extension cable into it so they can have a hot shower tonight, should they so desire.
Alfonso attempts a patch-up job, whilst Richard checks the power supply. Alfonso wishes he hadn't bothered.
I just plugged it in and he was holding the wires. What am I meant to?
Being more of a hindrance than a help, Richard leaves Alfonso to it. He and Sarah have an appointment to keep. As the storm clouds lift, the family prepare to head to Pescia for Sarah's 5-month scan, which will reveal the sex of the new baby. Sarah's clear about her preference.
I'd like a girl because I just would. Not because I have anything against Gregory, because he's wonderful. He's the most perfect boy. And if it's a boy, then it's just, what's it going to do? It's going to feel terrible because Gregory's just perfect, isn't he?
Sarah's only concern is the language issue.
I'm hoping that we'll understand what's being told to us and not get it wrong.
This will be the second of 5 scans throughout Sarah's pregnancy, a far greater number than she would receive back in England. "20 minutes later, the results are in. Sarah isn't happy.
You were convinced, weren't you, it was a girl?
Flipping heck, I might have known it was going to be a boy, mightn't I? I'm doomed to be outnumbered and outmanoeuvred by lads.
Only 3 more to go for a 5-a-side team.
5 frilly clothing.
No, never. Come on then, let's go. Oh, look at this pretty little girl.
Oh, thank you.
Back on the farm, it's early evening. Richard and Sarah get on with their chores, but their guests are still out and about. Supper time, and still no sign.
You have some more of mine if you want.
Richard and Sarah are concerned that the sisters won't be able to find their way back to the remote hillside farm at night.
They'll never find it in the dark.
No, but I haven't taken the torches with them either.
They really are the wrong sort of people to be here, aren't they?
Yeah. They're more sat around a pool type people. I think their idea of walking is walking to the bar.
It's a bit bizarre, isn't it?
As Richard, Sarah and Gregory turn in for the night, Chestnut House stands ominously empty. Their guests eventually returned in the dead of night, but they were up early with a rude awakening for Richard and Sarah. After just 2 nights in the Chestnut House, they decided to leave, saying they couldn't possibly spend another night in a glorified doll's house.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks for that. Sorry it's not turned out to be as you wanted, and I apologise for the Tuscan weather.
For this cup of tea, but maybe for some, but not for me.
For these particular ladies, it seems that the cottage's bijou rustic charm was no compensation for the cold shower, the outdoor bathroom, the temperamental wood-burning stove, and the precarious muddy road. They're off to check in to the nearest 4-star hotel, leaving Richard and Sarah devastated.
It's a double blow, really, because we was on such a high. I think like the adrenaline was going, trying to get things finished, trying to get all that, and we stood back and said, "Wow, I'm really proud, and I am really proud of what we've done."
Okay, it has rained, but that's not our fault. And okay, it's not huge and it doesn't have an ensuite bathroom upstairs, and but then I would have read the details and I'd have known that.
All those beautiful features that we would love to go and stop in, they've absolutely hated because they wanted a Holiday Inn with a minibar.
But whichever way they try to console themselves, the bottom line in the holiday business is that the customer is always right. Sarah and Richard's inexperience is beginning to tell. They could use some friendly advice.
That's good.
While Gregory is at school, Richard and Sarah travel to nearby Montevetolini to look up some fellow expats they've recently befriended. Tony and Liberty also run an olive farm with guest accommodation, but they are old hands, having moved to Tuscany some years ago with their young sons Bertie and Freddie.
They've been here like 3 years now, and they were in exactly the same position we were in, that we arrived, we loved it, but we didn't know anything.
Gorgeous.
Along with the asparagus, Tony and Liberty serve up much appreciated commiserations and moral support.
They don't live too far away and they're doing the same thing as we're doing, so there's always somebody that you can ring up and moan to, or ring up and ask a question to.
After lunch, Liberty gives Sarah a tour of their guest accommodation, a chance to pick up tips on selling Tuscan charm. The house has been lovingly restored, right down to the authentic Tuscan paint.
Sprite form.
Right.
It's called sangue de bouillon, which literally means blood of the
something or other.
Ox, I think.
Ox.
Yes, ox blood.
Ah,
and so
lovely.
in the olden days, they would have actually made the paint with using the ox blood. This is for our guests, really. So they have the kitchen.
The guests' every need has been anticipated and accommodated. There's even something for rainy days.
You mean Tony's leaving this in here for them?
I've persuaded him to at the moment. Yeah.
The detailing is immaculate.
We managed to find the lamps in the antiques market at Lucca.
Oh, yes, you've told me about it.
Sarah is impressed, but aware that Tony and Liberty are catering for a slightly different clientele.
They're aiming to have a swimming pool, and their rooms are a bit more swish than ours. Their bathrooms are very posh.
Rather than try and emulate this upmarket Tuscan style, Tony suggests to Richard that he and Sarah should play to their strengths and focus on attracting families with young children.
We think that the kind of visiting farms, the petting farms that
are
children's farms, and it's kind of, there's a real remoteness here, but there's no facility for people to go out and sort of go and see a working farm in the way that there is all around the UK.
That is a really good idea, because it is things that you see every day and you take for granted are completely spectacular to other people. To see or to feed some chickens, or to just go in and pick an egg and then, you know, that's where they come from, kind of thing. It's just a revelation for people.
Back on the ranch, an inspired Richard comes up with a way of exploiting Casa del Sole's selling points and making a bit of money on the side.
It's just so people have got the necessities that they need without having to traipse down into town, and also stuff that we've made here on the farm or grown here on the farm. Everything that comes out of the garden will be here on the shelves, and you know, it'll be quite nice. Obviously the olive oil as well.
The homegrown olive oil will be the shop's big attraction. After selling off the bulk of their crop, Richard and Sarah had a surplus that they were keeping for themselves. Bottled and labelled, Richard sees this as a little gold mine. Sarah, head of packaging and marketing, has designed the sticky labels.
They are often a little bit wonky, and perhaps we call it rustic, but as long as I stick them on and it's not Richard in a hurry, then they're usually fairly straight.
Richard has high hopes for the new project.
Given time, we can build this into quite a substantial little earner for us, really. This would, you know, €100 a week would easily pay for our food bill and a bit more besides. So if we can make that money without incurring any further costs, then it's going to make a big difference to us, really.
The farm shop's a pleasant distraction from the more thorny problems of getting the guest accommodation right. In a week's time, another couple will be arriving to stay in the Chestnut House, and a family of 4 is booked into the farmhouse. Richard and Sarah have to make sure that this time they bridge the gap between the dream they're selling and the reality of what's on offer. It's going to take a lot more hard work.
Oh, it's not high enough! What are you like?
But the pressure is too much for pregnant Sarah, and there's some bad news about the baby.
Never goes smoothly, does it? Last week I was worrying that I was having a boy rather than a girl, and now I feel so guilty. I feel terrible.
All that drama coming up next. The official book, No Going Back, Tuscan Living by Sarah Fraser, tells the story. It's out now, priced $12.99. To order, call 0870 1234 344 or hit channel4.com/shop.